Okay, we're back on our exploration of this cheapest in the United States $1,000 S500 Coupe that we bought earlier this week here in the Seattle, Washington area. And I just got finished going through the entire car end to end to look for receipts, paperwork, and other history information that might either corroborate what we saw on the Carfax or corroborate the stories and conversations that I had with the seller. And there was very little in the car. The car, outside of being full of pet hair, was relatively devoid of books, papers, or any other piece of information that would really give us much as to the history of that vehicle. Having said that, I did find this one receipt. This one receipt the owner actually gave to me as part of the paperwork, and it was the only receipt he had, or at least he knew he had. And this is dated April 3rd, 2021, so almost a year ago to the day that this recording is being done. And the work was done down in San Mateo, California, which, again, if we think about the conversation that we had with the seller, which you go back to the first video, you can get a feel for what that conversation went like. It backs up the story that he had gotten this car from his mother. It had been his father's car, and it had been gifted to him after his father's passing. It had sat for 5 years, really hadn't been used all that much, and he brought it up from California. So we do see a receipt back from a year ago, which is the right time frame that he had talked about. It kind of matches up with the timeline on the Carfax for the registration change. At HD Auto Repair down in San Mateo, California. And we have Esther, who I'm assuming is the seller's mother. I did black out Esther's phone number. And this was, according to the seller, the pre-drive safety inspection and service on the Mercedes before he drove it up from San Mateo to Seattle. So again, looking at the information here, it looks like it came out of shop on the 3rd as well. So it was in and out in one day. Again, the mileage at that time was 140,025. We got about 148,000 and change on it now. So in the last year, the owner has put on about 8,000 miles, which, again, he said it was a daily driven car. He used it to drive from the Linwood, Washington area to Bellingham regularly, and that's about 150-mile round trip. He said it was a great highway car, didn't use it a lot around town. He had a smaller car that he used around town, newer, because the gas mileage was so bad. So again, that all checks out. And when you're buying these cars, whether it's an old Mercedes or something else, taking the information that you're able to get on paper, crossing it with the Carfax and with your conversation with the seller is going to go a long way to trying to get you comfortable that what you're being told is true. So looking at the services that were actually performed, we have a lubrication service special, which was change oil and filter, lubricate, check oil filter levels, including brake fluid, power steering, windshield washer, drive belt, transmission fluid for most cars, check tire pressure, and hoses for wear and safety. So we do have an oil change at about 8,000 miles ago, which means we probably do. So we'll go take a look at that tomorrow and see if it's time for an oil change, see what the oil looks like. We had new oil filter put on. It went through smog check and got its smog certificate. It looks like what we have here is a replacement of valve cover gasket. And it says it looks like one valve cover gasket. But at $70, that's probably both. Normally, if you're going to do one, you do them both. But we'll assume that we've got one new valve cover gasket and that there was obviously a leak at some point and the owner decided to have that leak taken care of before they drove up. New wiper blade and a new blower motor, which was $500 and a $100 car wash. So that's a heck of a car wash. And then note, check engine light will come back on. So again, I think we're seeing from the scan that we did yesterday, the information that was provided on the Carfax, the information we're seeing here, the conversation we had with the seller, would indicate to us that the check engine light's going to come back on because we got emissions issues. We know we've got, potentially both oxygen sensors not working properly. We've got an evap sensor that seems to be bad, and the check engine light, while it's off right now because we reset it, it may come back. And this indicates, check engine light will come back on. But because this was a safety inspection for the drive up from California, and he did things like have valve cover gaskets replaced, because that was, and that's normally, unless that thing's just pouring oil, not going to be a safety issue. It looks like the car was reasonably well maintained coming up here, with the understanding that, hey, the only thing that's really wrong with this is going to cause your check engine light to come back on is the emissions system. And you're going up to Washington, there's no emissions testing. We'll get you through the smog check down here, but once you get up to Washington, all bets are off, but the check engine light's going to come back on. Now, we'll probably go ahead and address that as we start working on the car, kind of between trips. But this one is interesting because the check engine light will come back on. So for the $1,000 car, a year ago, the owner spent $1,427.21 to get the car in condition enough to drive from California up to Washington State. So the owner in the last year has put over $1,400 into the car just in maintenance, and we were able to pick up the car for $1,000. Again, anticipate that we're going to be putting some additional time, but more of the time and elbow grease into the car as we go forward. I have taken the car out the last couple of days, gave it a good amount of exercise. Yesterday, drove it down to the University of Washington and back, which is about a 35 mile round trip. Only thing that seemed to be strange on the car was the fuel gauge would start showing low fuel, and then it would stop. And so you turn the car off, turn it on, and it would be fine. And then even though it was showing at, over a quarter of a tank or almost half a tank, it would start to flash the low fuel warning. So I'm going to take a look at that, do a little bit of Google research. We'll share that information tomorrow, as well as do the actual drive of the vehicle tomorrow with y'all, so you can see the car's performance, the pros, the cons, what's working, what's not working, after a few days of being in the barn, and see how the car's holding up. I do travel back and forth between Washington and Florida, and I am headed back out to Florida on Sunday. However, we've got a couple projects down there too that I'll kind of bring up onto the channel here and share as we work on them, so that you've got a better sense for the vehicles and what they're doing. So again, looking forward to having you all on the journey, trying to document out this bring back to life on the 1997 S500 Coupe. And until next time.